the totally awesome filming, fishing and general workshop. And as you can see from my attire, I am not going fishing. I'm in full DIY mode with crash cap, and I'll tell you what I'm going to be doing. One of my properties has a toilet, and the gentleman residing in that property, which was a commercial shop, decided to let a leak run in the toilet system in the back room in the toilet. Brilliant. And not tell me. Therefore, all the plaster has been blown, as we call it, off the wall. Now, I can either strip it off and replaster the whole lot, or I can do a minor repair, as all landlords know, the cheapest way is generally the better, by using Artex. Now, Artex is really a sealing decorative finish used by decorators, but put it on thick, put it on right, and it covers a multitude of sins. Do you know what you need in tools? A dropped brush. Has to be dropped. Right, so a nice big paintbrush like this, but soft, needs to be soft. And what I call one of these, which is one of those really bendy buckets. I think they call them gorilla tubs, to be honest. I don't know how they get gorilla in them, but still, no worries. One of these and it carries around. And the Artex is just a powder that you mix up with water. First you've got to prep up the walls to do it, and then I've been doing with some plaster. But I'll show you what the Artex is and how you mix it up. It's pretty neat stuff. Right, now then, the last time I went into my DIY centre, it used to be about £10 for a big sack of Artex. But the economy has changed. The last time I looked, it was over £17 for a sack. But I'll give you a tip. Sometimes when they have deliveries, all these sacks of everything this applies to, this is ballast sand, cement, anything, they get clipped by the forklift truck prongs, these two prongs that lift up the pallet. And if they spill over in the shop, they sweep them up, they put them in a bag, and they sell them at a discount price. And this one is exactly the same way as a full one, and it costs a princely sum of £10. Oh, I'm enjoying this already. And you can pick it up easily, and you can always fold it over. Basically, I use it as a one-shot stop, this, so for £10 is worth a repair. It is a very, very fine powder. Let me show you. You can see this in here. There. You might be able to see. It's actually very, very fine. Now this is an all-temperature mix, textured finish there. So it's a very, very fine white powder. Okay, so now all you do with that is mix it with water. But what you're going to need is a whisk. You can do it with a stick, but it's just not the same. And a large drill. You can use it with a small drill, but I'd sooner use it with a decent, you know, commercial drill really. Mix it all up, makes life so much easier. And gives you, on the packet, gives you all the mixing instructions of temperatures, different quality controls, what you can use it for. What I'm using it for is to salvage this brick wall without the cost for plastering. That's what I'm doing it for. As a landlord, money saved is money earned. Okay, I'm going to be using a whisk like this, just like a food mixer really, isn't it? In fact, thinking of it, I ought to get the wife to do this, she'd probably be better at it. There's your whisk, end of shaft, a very large, chunky 650 watt rotary hammer drill. I take it off the hammer, I just put it on a regular drill, and I push this around and lock it, the support handle, sideways, because even though you're putting it in to mix up liquid and the powder, it can still get pretty gluey, and you don't want to jump it too much. You want a good grip, so I put it at just like this, 90 degrees. So there we go. Next thing is tipping about, I guess for two small walls on this toilet wall, about 3/4, half to 3/4 of this large sack. Then I'm going to mix some water with it. So let's get this rigged up. Now I don't like using a small rotary drill. I'd sooner use one of these big ones, which comes with a sort of SDS chuck, but you can also get a keyed chuck with the SDS spline on it. Locates in there, so you can put that in there, and then being heavy duty I can locate in there the whisk, which is only going to go into the tip. You want to get it in dead straight so that it doesn't spin off at an angle. Do it up nice and tight. There we go. And then we're ready, as I say in the cookery programs, to add water. Right, here we go. This is the heavy part. This stuff does fluff out a bit. Get that right in there. Now I do one mix. I do at least half a sack, which has probably only cost me £5. that you can pay a proper Artex guy, and I am by no means professional, trust me. But my Artex does stay on there for 10 or 15 years. It generally requires a cold chisel to get it off. And that's exactly what I want to do. I want to get that onto the wall, seal the wall up, get a pattern on it, and then decorate it. Now the main trick with Artexing, or just mixing it down here, is do not over wet it with the initial pour. I've got quite a lot in there. Just think of it as making porridge, because what you're going to do is get that water in there first and then add it gradually, mixing it up as you go. Here we go with the drill. It's going to be noisy and it whisks like this. I also tend to do it in bursts rather than having it flying all over my workshop, and I move it up and down. Once it gets, lock it with your feet like this. You just lock it with your feet and then move it up and down. Now when it goes stiff, start putting some more in there. In we go, just like making porridge, but try not to over wet it. Once you get it thoroughly mixed, then you can give it a good old whisk up, and you can see at the bottom it goes dry, so you've got to get down the bottom. Okay, so I've got it to a nice creamy consistency. I'm going to give it about a 15-minute rest, and then I'm going to give it another light whisk as well, just to let that water soak up with all those little particles of powder, make sure it's really, mixed in well. It's a nice smooth consistency, but you can also use this the next day. It's not like plaster, where it goes off hard almost as you're putting it on. This will keep to the next day, and the way you do it is to cover it with a film of plastic. Finish my whisk in there, and what I do is just leave that, as you can see, it's lovely and creamy, But let's say I was going to use it, it's left over from today, or I want to use it tomorrow. I just give it a little bit of extra water on the top like this, just run it over on the top, and then get a plastic bag, anything I do, any sort of plastic, split it down, open it right up, and then you just seal the top up like this, push it down in the middle. You're going to tap down on top and take all the air out of it, and just leave it like that, right up tight to the edges. That will keep at least for a day, maybe more. I've used it 2 days later and it still works. So let's get this now all mixed up. I've done a second mix as well with it, it's nice and creamy. Let's get it down to the room and let's have a crack at it and get it up on the wall. I'm going to get this bucket of mix down to the property and see if we can't repair that wall and at least make it habitable and decorative and cheaply. And to clean off the whisk, I just put it into a bucket of water, hold the bucket with my feet, $10, and as you can see, that's cleaned the end of the whisk, and the rest I can get off just with a rag. Okay, now once you've stripped off all that old wallpaper and all the old rubbish off the wall and broken out all the plaster and repaired the plaster you've seen, you can't just put the Artex straight on that porous brickwork, because that brickwork, being open, what I call open poured, will suck the moisture out of the Artex and you'll probably get cracking. I'm not saying you will, I get cracking, put it like that. So what I do is I bond it, and I use a PVA. I just use a regular multi-purpose PVA, which is, well, basically think of a watered down glue. And I tip this in. You buy it at all the DIY places, they all sell them. And this one, general purpose multi-purpose PVA is used for pre-decoration in porous surfaces, so that the paint actually sticks to the PVA rather than sticks to, say, the plasterboard and dries out too quickly, or the brickwork, etc. Is to give it a seal. It's basically sealing it up. So I pour some of this in there, and general purpose would be about, say, 5:1, but for very porous surfaces, which this brick certainly is because it's a 100-year-old building, about 3 to 1. My 3 to 1 on this pour surface will probably go 2 to 1. I should think something like that. I definitely don't want to do this job again for another 20 years. I want it sealed up. And then just get yourself either a brush or a little spatula, mix it all together like that, and just paint it on with a brush. Let it dry. Give it about 12 hours to dry off properly, 12-15 hours depending on the temperature of the place. And then over you go with the Artex over the top. Now it's all mixed together already, nice and creamy. Okay, now this is the offending wall in here. We've got a double wall, right angles. One side is stubble boarded. This is a brick wall, this is a brick wall, and it's extremely old and it's covered with a really, really thick layer of concrete type plaster. So now where the damp was down the bottom down here, and I filled that out with a 1-coat plaster. You can normally use a bonding coat, but then you've got to put a skim coat on top of that and it all takes time. So if you use 1 coat just for a patch like this down here, where the damp came, this was all the damp came in here, that'll go off, and that's gone off in 24 hours. Normally you put score marks across this to take your skim coat on top. You wouldn't need to do that now because obviously you're going to try and cover the whole thing with the Artex mixture, and you know you've got to get all the wallpaper and all the bits and pieces off. Now here's a little tip. You can get steam guns, you can get steaming units to steam wallpaper off. No problem at all on a modern building. On an old building, it very often heats up that plaster so hot it will blow it from the back and it will go bulbous and it will burst off. And then you're in even deeper trouble because then you will have to go and employ the services of a plasterer. So what I do is just a cold water soak off, a couple of tips, and I'll show you how it's done. Just get yourself this, you just get a wallpaper stripper, regular one, get yourself a sponge, bucket with some water in it, you don't need anything else, and then I'll strip most of this off. There's a few bits left, it'll give you a general idea. The wallpaper's here, there's a bit left over, you wet it, and then you score it backwards and forwards, horizontally. You must do it horizontally, and that way the water will rest in all those cracks and gradually soak it off. So you just soak everything like this, there's a little bit there anyway, score it backwards and forwards, give it 30 minutes, something like that, go away, have a cup of tea, or work on another section of wall like I do, never stop working. And then when you come back, that will really come off so easy, it'd be unbelievable. You've got to let it soak because it's cold. You can use hot water. I find it's a bit of a waste because it just runs down the bottom and goes all over the floor anyway. Clear up anything on the floor. If you've got carpet, obviously cover your carpet or move it. But that's a cold water soak with a sponge, a bucket of water and a wallpaper stripper. Makes it easy. Now when you've got all that wallpaper off, you've rubbed it all down, you've got it pretty smooth, you don't want any specks on there. That's when you put on that PVA bonding. I've got my 2 or 3 to 1 quite thick PVA bonding, which is really, it's just like a white glue. And that goes all over the loose plaster and will help to bond it and stick it all together. And also it seals it and makes it nice and smooth, so when you get that Artex mix, it spreads over it, it doesn't stick on the brush when you put it on, it absolutely flows over, it makes it much nicer. And of course the main thing is, because this is now being bonded and sealed up with a PVA, it's like a plastic skin over it, that's how I describe it. Then it's not going to suck all the water out of the Artex mixture when you put it up, and you get the drying and the cracking, which is the problem. Okay, well the PVA bonding's gone off now, and what I do is I just get a good brush load of this, start at the top, and you can work it right in the corners, put it on nice and thick, stab it in the corners, and just a good big gobful like that, and don't spread it too far. You don't want to spread it too far. You just want to try and build up an even level all the way along there, and I can tuck it right into the corners and that'll help seal it all up as well. And work your way along the top first to about a foot down, 3 or 4 feet across, but leave it thick because that's where you want to get the pattern. Now you can use a comb, which is one of those patterning combs. I'm not going to use that because what you don't want when you're repairing a really old wall like this, there might be imperfections that you're still going to see, and if you have a really, really perfect pattern, I think you're still going to notice those. So what I want is what they call, just call it swirls really. I think the proper name is called broken leather. But you know, that's all you want is something that's not too uniform in pattern. You don't want it absolutely perfect, otherwise you will see the imperfections in the pattern and the imperfections in the wall. This is to seal it up, hold all that old plaster together and basically make it good enough to decorate. Alright, you can see here while this is all breaking up, this has obviously been skimmed over before this wall. There's the original hardback area there, smooth, smooth, smooth. This has been skimmed in plaster edge in here. Now if you were wallpapering that, you'd have to sand this right down and probably have a whole skim over there. But by using the Artex, as you can see up here, just look at that. That's the patterning. That's the job done completely in one. You don't have to mess around. Pva Bonding, Artex over the top, pattern it with a broken and non-uniform pattern, and away you go. So I'm going to crack on with this wall, even down to the original concrete there. And I've tapped all this. Now that's hard, that's hollow, so that one wants to come away, but by putting this Artex over it, I'm going to get a good more few years out of that. Alright, you're eventually going to get yourself into a tight spot, and when you've got to go around pipes, obviously you can't get the big brush in there. You use a radiator brush like this, a long one, and you should be able to poke that right around the side and put the Artex down, and then you can still stipple it and shape it around the edges. Okay, so it's all been done now, completely Artexed, give it a good 24 hours to dry off, and then what I do is I get the back of a broom and just draw the broom very lightly over the top of the little stipples and spikes, because what happens is when you paint it, those little stipples will either come off in the paint or they fall on the floor or they will create a drip, so we don't want that. So just lightly knock off the very top specks that are sticking up, very lightly, just draw the broom over it. Then you can paint it, and this is what it looks like when it's finished. Now this wall here, believe it or not, is the other side of where that damp on the brick in the toilet was. And look, this was done by me about 8 years ago, and it's as hard as a rock. It's sealed everything up all the way along, got the same broken leather pattern, and just been painted white. Of course, you can paint it any colour you want. So all that remains now, even the ceiling which I've patterned up there, you can use a comb and put your own patterns on the ceiling, but for rough work, which unfortunately that wall was rough, that's now bonded and sealed up, and the Artex hold it in position. Of course we can decorate it, and there's only one other thing to do, and that job is washing your brushes out. But do not wash them out in a sink and let it go down the waste pipe, because this stuff will set eventually, and then you've got drain blockage as well, but that's a totally different film. Wash them out in a bucket of water, and then finish off in a bit of warm soapy water so it's all clean, and you can use it for decorating or Artexing again. Oh yeah, there is one other thing. I've got to change this for one of these. Yes, I worked very hard for this. I feel I'm owed something at least. So there you have the tip, how to repair the wall, how to put your Artex on. Might save you some money, and it should last quite a few years. All you got to do is decorate it. So keep watching. Totally awesome filming DIY section on the how-tos, and we'll have more tips up. In the meantime, cheers. Ah, this is the life. Is that tea ready yet?